what's up, people? Good morning. It is September 5th here, and there's some news going on, right? September 5th, Thursday. Hope you're all doing well. Some recent downside in the markets, increased volatility. VIX is trading above 20. We also have some interesting news that came out this morning. We had the US ADP unemployment change that came out, 99,000 versus 145,000 expected, so big drop. We saw markets react to that. We saw the US initial jobless claims as well, which was a bit lower. So there was volatility to the downside, to the upside, swings both ways as we're getting into the non-farm payroll numbers tomorrow. So just a surrounded plethora of employment figures that are starting off towards the end of this week, which is adding a little more movement and volatility to this market. But one of the biggest pieces of news, one of the biggest things that's making noise is the uninversion of the yield curve. So U.S. Treasury yields fell across the board on Wednesday. Growth concerns and a softer than expected July jobs opening print lifted the bets of a 50 basis point interest rate cut this month from the Federal Reserve. And we saw the uninversion of the 10 to 2-year yield briefly normalized for the second time in over 2 years. After uninverting last month following 25 consecutive months of inversion, an inverted yield curve is widely seen as a recessionary indicator, but normalizing of the curve is not necessarily a positive sign, as the curve can uninvert before the recession hits, which we've seen in multiple instances in the past. So a lot of people are watching this thinking, okay, the music's finally stopping, the Fed's starting to cut rates soon, like it's pretty over. It's going to be an interesting fact going forward, seeing how this kind of plays out throughout the next few months, right? We're going into an election period as well. And we have, again, the Fed pivot. So the fact that this is occurring right now, I think that it's more of a late, it's a lagging situation where we're most likely going to see some decent downside in 2025, especially after a Fed pivot and like this scenario is going on with these yield curves right now. But realistically, it's more of a laggard. It's probably not going to hit instantaneously the second this thing uninverts, right? All hell breaks loose. Is one of the things. So a lot of people are watching this as one of the big indicators of things actually turning around. And we've seen some recent downside in the markets, nothing too insane per se, but the first day of September was a pretty significant downside move, especially with tech across the board. A lot of it, everyone is pointing fingers at NVIDIA, right? NVIDIA down significantly over the last several sessions here from that topping out after the earnings report. We're down about like 20%, one can say. That is going to affect the markets, especially with the Fed pivot. We got non-farm payrolls tomorrow, which is a big factor as well. So I think realistically, we haven't necessarily seen a top in the markets. That's my personal opinion. I think that these pullbacks do try to get bid back up after we get that kind of seasonal rollover. Markets are seasonally weak throughout these months, right? September is notorious. Everyone fears September as like a nasty red month realistically. And going into October, November, typically seasonality is a little more bearish. So a lot of these things are kind of getting factored in at the same time. You also have to the other side, right, where people are looking at this and saying, oh, election year. Well, elections are typically bullish, right? So you have both sides of the coin here where you're getting a lot of data until something happens. You're not necessarily going to be super confident in what has happened. So I am looking at this as an area of risk realistically over the next like half a year. I think that maybe we kind of settle down until after the election, until the Fed starts actually cutting more and more and more, and then we're going to see the results of our coveted Fed pivot. So that's some of the important factors going forward right now. I think it's also good to take a look at what's going on with the S&P 500 today as we continuously trade in this large lower band distribution. One of the things that I was talking about yesterday is that it can get a little choppy and dicey within this auction, so it's not like super favorable to trade, and it looks like we're about to open back within that area. So realistically, yesterday I was pointing out the top band of the distribution around that 65 made the most sense to see if some kind of downside momentum could hit. And right now, as we're still opening within it, again, for me, it's more of a wait and see type environment, but we've got kind of two pivotal areas, 25 to 35. This is what I really don't like about this area, because we have this like cluster of this like heavy volume that's just like slap dab towards the bottom of it. So the best case scenario for the bear side is like we open up and things start selling. We go and break 55.08, right? Heavy reoffer through that, which I'm going to be looking to sell rallies down into that 54.80 area, big target to the downside. Otherwise, right, we got to stay very patient as we kind of just like bounce around that 25-35. Not ideal area for me to be super active on the day. So I'm going to have to just wait and see what's going on. A lot of people are getting very bearish into NFP, which seems like the more obvious trade, right? But what's happened over the last three sessions is the consistent failure to actually break under 55.08. So the most obvious trade isn't necessarily the best one. It's usually the opposite. So we'll see if these guys can't catch an offer under this 55.08 and we can't close below there. I think that these bears have had enough and we could start looking for some kind of potential acceptance back to the upswing. So that's what I'm looking at today. That's how I'm going to go about the session today. And let's open up our live room, see what's cooking there. And I'll see you all tomorrow to wrap up the week. And we'll talk about NFP since it's going to be the main news event pre-market. So enjoy the day. Happy Thursday, everyone. And we'll chat very soon.